your body can only take so much, at least my body only could. And that's when I felt my heart stop. I lost my human body. Well, am I dead? If you only knew. There is no such thing as death. Not scary, just dark. There's no pain. There's no fear. You're showing this to a human. And in front of me is this scroll, and it's unrolled. And on it is this beautiful, sparkly golden script. I watched it grow back with binary code. I felt 7 beings behind me. It was kind of weird to feel my heart stop, but it was such a weird feeling to feel it start again. That was intense.
How has this changed your perception of, reality as a whole?
Yeah, right away it was really hard. I felt like I'd been stuffed into a sausage casing. The walls freaked me out. Everything was so solid, and it was very weird. My reality had been flipped upside down, inside out, round and round, and all of that. So it was really hard. And then I was able to feel people's pain, like physical pains, in my own body. And so I drive through a car wreck, and not through a car wreck. I drive by a car wreck, and I could feel where they were injured. I could feel if they had a seatbelt burn, broken leg, whiplash, if they had been deceased. And that was pretty overwhelming. And I also heard people's thoughts for a portion of time after this. And it was fine. It was kind of fun until I heard some not pleasant thoughts. And that really freaked me out. And I was in a state of weird survival confusion, upset that I was back here. Where did I go? How did that happen? What did that look like? What was it? Why can't I go back? And I actually got sent into a major depression. And I, within about 6 months, I actually tried drastic measures to get back there, which ended me up in a 4-day coma, with a grand mal seizure and a stroke, and only a brief out of body experience. I didn't have another NDE or anything. I just realized that I was meant to stay here for a reason. I wasn't happy about it, but I worked really hard. I did a lot of physical therapy, and I got in touch with some other NDErs who understood kind of that mental and emotional trauma that coming back had on me. And they really helped me figure out, okay, well, you're here for a reason. You're not meant to go, and don't quite remember those sessions very well, but I do remember it helped me get to where, okay, well, I don't know why I'm here, but I'm just gonna get my life back in order and do what I can. And that would go on for another 5 years of just trying to reintegrate back to this reality.
We spoke before the show, and I don't know how on earth I did not come across that detail. I don't know if you've shared it. I must have somehow missed it. I did not know that you did that years later. I will say that I'm glad it worked out in the way that it worked out. I couldn't imagine, spending my afternoon with anyone else. Um, and that kind of brings an interesting point. You had said in the past that you were convinced that you were going to, I'm paraphrasing you. You thought that you were going to die early. In fact, you were pretty sure that you were going to have, I believe you said you did not think you would make it to 28.
Mhm.
You're one of the only people I've heard that have said that. I've said similar things, growing up with the asthma, and I know how that has affected myself with like disregard for longer term consequences as far as, smoking cigarettes, or in your case, I think, you said drinking. Wasn't there a doctor recommended that you drink for some odd reason? What the hell was wrong with that guy?
Yeah, so since I was probably 15, I had just this knowing that I was going to die before I turned 28. I told this to my mom, and she took it seriously, but it's like, okay. And then, I progressed with this illness. I of course didn't think that dying, me dying before 28 would be a near death experience. I thought I was going to be out of here and stay out. And then about the part of being very depressed afterwards, I don't share that on too many of my interviews, but it is important, and it's been easier to share. And I think it's really important because a lot of people are there or have been there, and not enough people talk about it. So not all of these NDEs come back and people are just magnificently healed and have this amazing life and everything changes for them. There's a lot of work involved. So it's really passionate of a really big passion of mine that I help share, that it's traumatic. Especially people tell me, oh, I wish I had an NDE. I just wish I had a near death experience so that I could have these metaphysical gifts, have this enlightenment, see what's beyond, all this stuff. I said, there's way less traumatic ways to get there. Tons and tons of ways. Meditation is a way. You do not need to have a near death experience to change your life. As far as the condition and the disregard for long-term effects, when I was 18, I was finally diagnosed with this condition, myoclonus dystonia. And from age about 14 to 18, we tried all the pharmaceuticals. I mean, my mom and I co-authored a book just about this medical condition. And in the back of it, we list every medication that we could remember me being on, what the pharmaceutical says the side effects could be, what the less than 1% of people get, and what I got, all the side effects. By the time I'm diagnosed, we've tried everything that the doctors could think of. It's a rare condition. About 1 in a million is what they estimate how many people have this. So not very many people, not a lot of research on it. And it is known as alcohol responsive myoclonus dystonia. What that means is they've done research. These twins had it. It's usually a genetic condition. And these twins had myoclonus dystonia. And they would try different medications or placebos. One would be the control, one would be, the test dummy, basically. And they found alcohol was quick acting and effective. It stopped the symptoms. So my doctor at 18 said, well, we do know that alcohol works for this condition. You can try it, just be careful. So get this, going 8 years on these symptoms with no help. The pharmaceuticals gave me unexpected side effects. I didn't know, if I would have memory loss, weight gain, absent seizure. I mean, the list is extensive. With alcohol, I know exactly what to expect. You drink too much, you black out. You might get nausea, you might get headaches, you might get hangovers, you might get hungover. So I knew the side effects and they were less. I already had headaches. I already was nauseous. Then alcohol let me sleep. So when I found I could treat with alcohol, my life changed. For a brief amount of time, I had normalcy back in my life. I could work. I bought a house. I went to school. I could do things. I could drive because my body wasn't, twitchy and jumpy and all this stuff, so it really gave me some normalcy. But to what you're saying, I just had this deep rooted knowing I was going to die before 28. So I didn't care about the long-term effects of alcohol. So, so what if I got liver damage? I'd die before then anyway. So what if I became an alcoholic? So what? I was going to die young anyway, so absolutely to your point. At a time I was mad at them for suggesting the alcohol, but looking back, they're just trying to do what they could to help me. And it taught me a lot.
Obviously, with respect to, there was an actual reason you had a serious condition and things like that. When I heard that they recommended alcohol, the first thing I thought was, was this guy drunk when he said, like, it sounds like your doctor, he had like a pocket full of nips. He's like, here, kid, take this, this. I just
Back
picture,
alley doctor.
yeah, I picture he's like, this will put hair on your chest, kid. Like, this gives you a nip or something in the doctor's office. So it didn't go down like that.
No. I mean, maybe 100 years ago it would have been, or 50 or something, back alley, like, come here, kid, like, we'll get you calmed down. No, it was by the same doctor that diagnosed me, a very well-known institution. And she said her and none of her colleagues had seen a condition. They've heard of it, but they've never seen it for themselves. So she was honestly just trying to give me some relief. Was the advice probably misguided and extremely dangerous for a 18-year-old person to take a hold of their own medication? Yeah, absolutely. It's an addictive substance. that there's no prescription needed. And just be careful was the advice. Is, looking back, it was, why did that come out of your mouth? But also, I'm glad that she had enough sympathy for me and compassion to recommend something.
You had said in the past around about the idea that time is frustrating. And I'm curious, correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem like maybe you might be kind of an analytical, like trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. Like, is the reason that you think time is frustrating because you're trying to like solve like the equation, what is reality, what is consciousness, and that time kind of throws a wrench in the whole operation? Or am I incorrect?
I think you could definitely be correct. I don't think I've thought about it on that deep of a level. But time is frustrating. It throws a really weird wrench because our world, our universe, and our reality as we know it are all based on time. And it's frustrating to me because so much of it is wrong. We don't know. And we try to make things up all on the basis of this made up idea of time. And in my NDE experience, as well as some of my other out of body experiences, time didn't exist. And being here in this place with a thing called time, I understand the necessity, but yeah, it throws wrenches in everything, absolutely everything.
You had mentioned that you could experience different bodies at the same time. Is that, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the way you said it? Do you think that like a part of our consciousness can be in one body here and another body here? From the localized perspective, you experience just one, but on like a grander scale, it's all happening at the same time?
Oh, absolutely. Which gets us back to this time conundrum, multiple bodies, but having a localized awareness of one. I also think that our past lives are not necessarily in the past or the future, but they happen simultaneously. And that is why we have deja vu and we can jump timelines.
Where do you think that you were before your conception? Have you ever thought about this?
So I did not ever think about this until my near-death experience. I guess I did a little bit because, the whole abortion debate and, when does the soul come in? When is it considered living? When is it considered a person? That debate, which we had to study and debate in debate class. So I guess that was kind of my only thing is, when does a soul enter a body? And kind of, where does that soul come from? What are we before? And I didn't give it much thought too far before the actual conception of life. But since then, I've pondered, it's like, if there's no time, when did we start? When did we become a thing? Have we always been a thing? How much of my past do I not know? Is there such thing as a past? Am I just, because I was back to kind of the beginning in my near death experience. And then kind of, I would call them different dimensions as well. And then with my astro traveling, I was also in all these different, parallel universes. I think I start to ponder it and then go down a loophole and a rabbit hole and just kind of give up for a little while.
I don't blame you because it's like it's never ending. You ever feel like sometimes you're super close to the answer? I don't want to assume anything, but I sit there and I say, okay, there's 2.16 million species that we found on the planet. That's only what we found. That's only on planet Earth. That's only today. You're talking such an astronomically large number that sometimes I sit there and say, it seems pretty probable that we would live again or that this is like a continuation type thing. Do you believe that we reincarnate?
Well, so I used to believe that until I dived more into these parallel universes, and your past lives are probably happening more simultaneously. So my idea of reincarnation has definitely changed drastically. Instead of being, oh, I was this person at 1800s, now I'm this person, and I could be this person in the 3000s. It's more like, oh, that person is actually happening, infinitely, or maybe not infinitely, altogether. Another thing that helps me when I go down these rabbit holes, I didn't know much about, any of the paranormal metaphysical stuff, not much about NDEs before my own, but I did know my great grandmother had three. She didn't talk about him. You know, it was the age where it was very taboo to talk about. But she said two really important things: watch your words, and we're not meant to know everything. So every time I go down this, like, I need to know, where I'm figuring it out and plugging in the pieces of the puzzle and solving the equations, like, oh, right. Just like my scroll being rolled up in front of me and like all that knowledge being gone from my memory, it's like, oh yeah, we're not meant to know everything. Doesn't make me happy.
It's a pretty good argument to say it would like interfere with what we're doing. So,
Yeah.
there's a part of you that says, well, kind of makes sense. But could we find out? I don't know. I tend to think we could. You had mentioned paranormal experiences. Do you mind sharing what these were? And, we can kind of dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a kid, it started off seeing ghosts, and not a big deal. They weren't scary. I wasn't scared. They didn't pay me any attention. I just, well, okay, interesting. So that was pretty benign. However, things got creepier and not so benign. One of the ones was when I saw my great grandmother. I don't remember which great grandmother, I think on my dad's side. We had one of her dolls, so old generational doll, inanimate, lost its eyes decades ago. And one evening, its eyes glowed red and it turns its head towards me. That scared me to my core. I knew it was not an imagination. I don't think I was a very imaginative child at all, like in any capacity. So that was absolutely terrifying. And then I had shared this with my mom, and turns out a well respected guy at our church who lived just a small town away, maybe 10 minutes, saw the same thing, but on his staircase. And he moved his whole family out of that house within a week. And he was a well respected guy of the church. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm not crazy. But that was terrifying. And we didn't know what to do. Another really unsettling experience early on was I would see this entity that looked like a shadow across behind, like on the walls in the basement. It had a rim top hat and a cape. I had a sleepover with like 10 girls from church, and half of them saw it at the same time as I did. The other half thought we were just making it up to spook them, but we were all like really scared. I told my mom this as well. It turns out my sister and her friends also saw the same entity, but my sister and I didn't tell each other. We just told my mom. And later, after I released my first book, White Flame, about all the paranormal metaphysical stuff, I researched and found out this entity. I think he's the Hat Man, is what he's well known around the world for, notorious for showing up to children in basements, and he's a very well-known dark entity. Some other experiences I had were just apparitions and dark entities in different forms, basically before my NDE.
At that point, had you watched, a bunch of scary movies? Was the people you were living in, do you think there could have been an influence, something got like rooted in your mind? It could have been a scary movie when you were like 3 years old. Do you think there's any possibility of like that influence? Or do you think you
Yeah.
like, really saw a ghost?
So I grew up in a really pretty strict Christian household. We weren't allowed to watch movies like that or read books or hear about, these otherworldly things. So my Christian household prevented me from being exposed to any of it. So absolutely do not think it was implanted, with this 3D. I definitely 100% believe I was seeing what I was seeing.
Okay. And I just have to ask that to be like neutral about it, right?
Yep, of
Um,
course.
So I interviewed someone, Samuel Chong. I'll give him a quick shout out. Samuel Chong thinks that ghosts are made of electrons and that the electrons hold some sort of memory, and that's why they stay in the places that people have lived. Or it was an interesting theory. What do you think these paranormal entities are? I know it's a vague question, but do you have any ideas on what they could be?
I have dived deep into trying to explain what I saw and what I experienced, and everything in my life. And as far as these ghosts and entities are concerned, I think they're different things. I think there are ghosts where it could be the memory or, part of a soul that's gets stuck and sticks around. And dark entities kind of take me down a whole nother rabbit hole, and, kind of where they come from and what they're doing here. There are ideas of some of them being extraterrestrial, some of them being just of a dark creation place. So I think depending on what paranormal activity you're talking about, there's different definitions I would have for them.
You are a death doula. I've never heard of this term until, kind of researching, getting ready for this interview. Would you mind sharing with us what is a death doula? What is it that you do?
Yeah, a death doula in general is a holistic non-medical support person. You might be familiar with a birth doula or a midwife who helps life enter the world and transition into this world. Well, I just help on the other end. I help with a transition out of that world, out of this world, in basically Cliff Notes versions. But specifically, what I'm passionate about, there are many different types of death doulas out there. Some focus directly on hospice, some on palliative care. You can take it and turn it into what you like and what you're passionate about. With my experiences, it's going to be definitely end of life transitions and helping people kind of plan and prepare on a mental, emotional, and spiritual level, as well as, the actual paperwork that you can do to prepare. And then I'm also really passionate about grief, because loss isn't just when you lose a loved one. Loss can be anything that you perceive as a loss. Your loss of your childhood, if you had chronic illness or abuse, loss of your future, if you wanted to be, I don't know, probably putting words in your mouth, but I'm gonna, like going off of your asthma. I don't know when you were diagnosed or anything, but if you were 4 years old and you really wanted to be a all-star high altitude runner, and then your asthma took over and you couldn't do that because of it, you lose that perceived, who you wanted to be, that perceived future. People with chronic illness, sometimes they've got this amazing, incredible life that's just taken from them because of their illness. Of course, there's loss of job, loss of ideals, loss of self sometimes, especially with NDEs or these psychedelic trips. There's a lot of ego death involved, and for some people, that can be very traumatic. So I'm very passionate about grief as well, and illness.
You also volunteered to work in hospice. Was that prior to becoming a death doula? Do you do both of them at the same time? And also, kind of like, what was the motivation to do that? What's kind of like, is it because you sympathize or empathize so much with people that are in that position? Like, what kind of made you want to do those things?
Yeah, so I've loved volunteering my whole life. So while I worked really hard at building my career as a marketing professional in basically the construction industry, I guess I wasn't as fulfilled as I thought I was, because I love to volunteer. I would always be volunteering, whether it was long term, short term, just hour here and there. I've always had a heart of volunteering. Well, after my near death experience, I would love to say it's just because I was empathetic and compassionate for people at end of life transitions. But full transparency, I was also jealous. I wanted to I knew where they're going, kind of. I wanted to be as close to that as I could. So it was definitely part selfish as well as part, I wanted to help them. I knew that I could authentically hold space for that transition. You have family that is fearful, you have maybe some apathetic medical staff. I knew I could just hold pure joy for them and just ooze it. I didn't have to say anything about my experience. I didn't have to talk. Actually, most of the people that I volunteered with in hospice were in the memory ward. So they couldn't talk. They wouldn't have memory of what I said anyway, but they could feel that I was okay for them. I was okay with their transition. And sometimes that's all they needed. I was doing that while I was still working at corporate America. And it wasn't until I left my whole career, you know, everything I'd built up everything for. So when I left my role in corporate America, I decided to try anything and everything that touched my heart. I loved cooking, so I tried to be a private chef. I tried catering. I loved animals, so I tried house sitting. I just anything that touched my heart, I would explore. And in my exploration, I found a thing called a death doula. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And I learned that I could help people who are in active dying. I could help people prepare for dying. I could help people who had lost somebody who had died. And I could really take it and do so much more than what I could do in hospice and volunteering. You could be a death doula and volunteer. You can turn death doula into a business, which I have done. So you can really take it and roll with it however you want. And I was really excited and took a training on it and became certified.
You said that you love animals. Do you have a favorite animal? Obviously, you have dogs. Are dogs your favorite?
Oh, that's really tough. I do love dogs. I've got one. He's a huge source of love in my life, but I think I just love animals in general. They also get me thinking about the complexities of life and reality. Reality are they experiencing? Where do they go? The ethical, moral dilemmas of it all. I love meat. I'm a meat eater. I had this NDE, and some people are like, you can't be spiritual and a meat eater. Well, my body, my body needs it, and I love it. So yeah, I know they're really cute animals. Have you ever seen a cow like up close and personal? It's got big, beautiful eyes, and they just stare at you.
Well, it's the cycle of life. I think
Yeah.
we try to, in my personal opinion, I think we try to kind of reject or deny that because we've taken over the planet. Let me switch over. Hold on. As humans, we've taken over such a large portion of like the actual land mass of the planet where it's like, we're kind of making these animals go extinct. And then I feel as though it's the weaponized virtue of care about the animals. Obviously, we care about the animals, but if you take a look at wildlife, we're all eating each other. Like this is
Yeah,
how one
absolutely.
organism has to eat the other to stay alive. You could call it vicious, but it's a cycle. It's a vicious cycle. And I think to deny that we should be eating like meat and stuff like that, I think that's just crazy. Like clearly we need it. And then you have the globalist. I didn't mean to go off on this, but
I
you
love
got
it.
me going. We have the globalists saying, these people are not going to stop eating meat willingly, so we're going to do an extra good job on vaccines to make them physically intolerant to meat. These people are crazy. They want us physically weak. I think if you're watching this, you should go eat a goddamn cheeseburger, okay? You know
I
what I
support
mean?
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think we would go in that direction, but I had to say it.
Well, I agree. And I mean, we are living the human experience, and the human experience is also, like you said, the circle of life. And it, as cute and sentient as God, I heard freaking plants when I came back too. So what am I supposed to do? Starve to death? So there's that. I'll leave it on that.
That's a fair point. Plants are alive too, so.
Yeah.
If you could ask the person watching this video right now one single question, what would it be?
What's your why?
What's your why?
Hmm.
That's a very interesting question. And that was a quick response too. You're quick on your feet. I like that. If people want to find more of your stuff, your books and everything else, where is it that they can find you?
On my super punny website. You mentioned I like puns, and I do. I have a deep brain stimulator, and I had somebody say I was part robot. And my name is Bri or Brianna, and I was called Bri0nic, like bionic Bri. So my website is Bri0nicllc.com. That is Bri0nic LLC.com, because I also saw a lot of binary code and had to throw a number in there thinking, oh, this is cool. It's actually made it pretty difficult for people to find me. But you can find all my socials, all my online courses, all my books, all my video podcasts. They all get uploaded to a simple section on my website for your viewing pleasure.
Thank you so much, Bri, for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. we're gonna have to get you on again. You know, I think we could have more conversations, but it's been a treat. It really has, and so I appreciate your time. Um, for everyone watching, thank you so much for your sliver of time. This has been ours. I say that on every episode. I can't stop. I'm so
I
bad.
love it. I love it. It's awesome.
Well, I really do appreciate your time, so thank you so much, and can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, this has been so much fun. And I just want to leave you with one thing from Barcelona. Finally made it closer to the beach where I actually did start to see skateboarders. I think I sent you a message. I'm not sure a picture, but a message. They also had they had boards, that they were surfing with on their skateboards, and I was only a lot jealous.
Dude, I'm jealous that you got to go there. I've been wanting to go there for my whole life. It's like, it's like the dream place for a skateboarder. So, I hope you had fun. That was for
Yeah,
your birthday, right?
yep, yep, it was. And I grew up skateboarding, actually, so I loved skateboarding. It was one of the only things I could do, up until my body wouldn't let me anymore. So I get the love, and I tried skateboarding again in my 20s, and I don't fall the same way anymore. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, it's you gotta like if you stop doing it, it's like it's hard to explain, but I could see you getting like out of there's like a way to fall and everything. I'm sure you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about, but
Yep.
that's so great. You just continue to amaze me. All these things that I somehow didn't know. It's incredible. Um, well, thank you so much, and I really appreciate your time. So, yeah, we'll talk again soon.
Go have fun. All right, we'll talk. Have fun. Bye.